Creation is not only another prequel to the opening sequence of The Conjuring, but it's also the prequel to the first Annabelle prequel titled just Annabelle. This one, however, is not directed by John R. Leonetti, thank goodness, but it is the same screenwriter as that film, but with director David F. Sandberg, who did Lights Out, a pretty fun horror film. And this film focuses on a Catholic sister and a group of orphans that accompany her to this new house. It's going to be their new orphanage so that they don't have to get split up between different places. And the Mullins, this couple that own this house, they have a pretty unique past that might still be lingering at this house in the form of this doll, Annabelle. And there's this young girl, Janice, who is the weakest of them all. Because she has polio, she has a leg brace on, she starts to notice the creepy stuff first, and from then on it gets really, really rough living in that house. I'm a big fan of The Conjuring, and I love The Conjuring 2 even more. In fact, I'm all for this Conjuring cinematic universe they're trying to do. I mean, obviously, it's not like they're all gonna, like, team up and, like, fight other demons or anything like that. Nothing like Avengers or Justice League cinematic universe, just a really cool tying together of horror stories. That idea of a cinematic universe, I'm actually all for. However, I really hated Annabelle, the first prequel film. I thought there was only one great sequence in that one, and the rest of it lost a lot of what made the Conjuring films really great and special. So when I heard that they were going to make another Annabelle film, I was like, but why, though? But then they announced that it was going to be a prequel to that prequel, and the director was going to be the guy who did Lights Out, and that horror film was really good, and I've been really interested to see what else this director does next, so I actually got slowly more excited for it. What really did it, though, was seeing what Blumhouse did with their Ouija series. The first Ouija was completely terrible, but then they got Mike Flanagan to do the prequel film, Ouija Origin of Evil, and not only was it better, but it was actually fantastic. So that actually got me even more excited to see what they were going to do with this one. And once again, we have a horror movie prequel that is much better than the first film. What are the odds of that even happening? I mean, who would have guessed that this would be the new thing, making prequels to pretty crappy movies and having them be really great? I mean, I never saw this coming in a million years. However, I wouldn't say that Annabelle Creation is a fantastic horror film on the level of Ouija Origin of Evil. This movie definitely does suffer through some typical horror movie tropes. Like through the beginning part of the film, there's a lot of false jump scares where there's just a lot of loud noises. And then you're just like, oh, I was scared for a minute because of the noise, but it's something innocent. Like there's a little bit too many of those near the beginning. And the characters in this film, they make a lot of pretty dumb decisions, and I know that they're kind of tied down to the idea of, well, they can't leave the house. I mean, what else are they gonna do? But at the same time, a lot of the decisions they make, they didn't really have to make, and they could have easily just avoided. So this movie isn't really something original in the horror genre, something to shake it up a little bit. What really makes this stand up, though, from just another generic horror film is David F. Sandberg's direction. He helmed this movie so great. The scares in this film, when they actually become actual scares and not just false jumps, they are so great. There's a lot of sequences that really just take their time, where the cinematography will be completely still, and maybe it'll start to slowly pan over, and there's a lot of darkness like covering around the set, so a lot of the darkness that they capture on the camera actually got to me at some point. Like they'll have several shots of like darkness, and I was already like starting to clench up, not knowing if something was actually gonna jump out or not. But what I was really surprised by was that there wasn't a whole lot of jump scares. It's a lot of just seeing something on screen and no music or sound is accompanying it. You're just seeing the creepiness. And that kind of horror filmmaking is so great. The fact that you don't have to recognize a sound effect just so you know, oh, that's scary. The fact that they can just have great cinematography shine all over the scene and you can just stare at this horrifying visual. David F. Sandberg kind of perfectly adopts what kind of filmmaking James Wan usually does with those Conjuring films, and he does it in the best way possible. There's so many sequences that had me on the edge and had great cinematography and great acting going on, great sound effects too. And as far as actual scares go, this movie actually is one of the better horror films of this entire year. I'd say Get Out is still the best horror film, but Annabelle Creation, as far as the overall scares that they presented, this is really awesome. And of course the Annabelle doll. In the first Annabelle movie, they just kind of had it sit down like forever and they didn't really focus too much on it, and I was just like, what's so scary about this doll now? In this movie, they actually do more stuff with the doll to where I was like, okay, I remember why I was creeped out by that thing now. And did you guys notice that, are the eyes different? Like the Annabelle, are they different now? Because they look a little bit bigger than when they originally did. But I'm not saying this movie is really good just because the filmmaking-wise of the horror is so great and the horror itself when you're seeing it is so good. But a lot of it has to do with the characters you're seeing. Now, dumb decision-making, yes, absolutely. But as far as performance and as far as character writing, it actually isn't too bad for them. Better than a lot of horror movie characters we've gotten recently. For example, the Mullins couple, at first you're like, oh, how sweet, but then as you see the film progress, you kind of have this kind of sorrow for them, seeing what they've been through and how they've had to handle it. And I was just like, I actually feel something for this couple. Like, I feel genuine sorrow for these people. And then there's Sister Charlotte, who I was actually a little worried about. Maybe she would be kind of annoying with like, oh, none of this is happening, this is all in your heads. But there is a sense of like, she does not want to really acknowledge a lot of the evil stuff going on here, but she still wants to stay optimistic and keep the kids in check. And even the orphan girls, even though they focus on two more specifically, the orphan girls themselves actually do feel like a family. And they also aren't irritating or annoying, but they do act as normal teenagers would, where they don't want to really hang out with the younger ones too much because that's not really their style. But that didn't come off as annoying, it just felt like, yeah, that's how this would actually happen, and they're just acting like any family would, really. But the two orphans they focus on specifically are Linda and Janice. Now, Janice, the actual actress that plays Janice, I was surprised she's actually the sister of the boy in Lights Out. That was kind of a neat thing to learn, but also she as an actress, she's also really good, like her brother in Lights Out. She is really good in this film, and as a character, you really do start to feel bad for her, not just because she's an orphan, she hasn't been adopted, but also because she is, as they point out, the weakest of them. She has polio, she has this leg brace on constantly, she always moves slowly, she has to take this chair up the stairs, you know, and it goes a little bit slow, so seeing her have this handicap actually adds a little bit to her. But also when scares start to go down and you're like, oh crap, I know this girl would probably be running, but she can't run because of that brace. Like, there's one sequence in particular where she's just trying to get out of a situation to the best of her ability, and it's kind of hard to watch because you're just like, oh no, please, just overcome this. And then you have Linda, played by Lulu Wilson, who was conveniently in Ouija Origin of Evil, the prequel that was great compared to the first film that sucked, and now she's in another prequel that is great compared to the first film that sucks. Kinda coincidence that you got her for this one too. She was also really good in this film, and you can really tell that she cares for Janice a lot. These two, they want to be adopted with the same parents, they have this bond that they share, and it's really kind of touching, especially near the ending of the film. It gets to a kind of emotional point where I actually really did care for them, and I wanted to see how they made it out of this. I wanted them to be okay and together. So overall, is this movie really anything new, anything you haven't seen before? No, not really, but as far as the execution of the scares, some things they do with it, the utilization of the cinematography and sound design and lights too in the set, and also how the actors portrayed their characters and also certain writing towards the characters, it actually does help you get engrossed with the story. Even if it's not the freshest thing you've ever seen, it's still a really fun film to watch, especially for a horror film. Also, as far as the ending goes, trying to wrap this film up in a nice little bow with the rest of the Conjuring universe, I thought what they did was actually pretty cool. I thought they did it in a really neat way. As far as the two post-credit scenes that people have been talking about in the news, don't stay for them. I know some people will be like, oh, but we have to. David F. Sandberg tweeted that we must. No, just... You really don't need to see them. It doesn't really add anything to the plot or any future movie. It's just don't see them. I'm gonna give Annabelle Creation a B+. Sure, characters made dumb decisions that they probably shouldn't have made. There's a couple of false jump scares in the beginning that were kind of annoying, and it's not the freshest horror film story that you're gonna get, but as far as the execution goes, David F. Sandberg delivered a prequel that is actually worth watching, unlike John R. Leonetti's Annabelle film. So if you were disappointed by Annabelle 2014, I would suggest checking out Annabelle Creation. Not only is it much better, but it's also just a good film on its own. But if you've seen Annabelle Creation, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.